Would you like to feel more confident speaking English? And by confident, I mean, would you like to feel that your English comes to you naturally, that you feel comfortable speaking English, that you own your English? English doesn't belong to native speakers. It belongs to everybody, including you. Today, I'd like to share with you some English phrases and expressions that I use at least once a day. But you probably won't have been taught these expressions in English class at school. I'm not kidding. I use these expressions from the moment I wake up until the minute I go to bed. I use them with my kids, with my friends, with my family, work, with complete strangers. I'm Jo, and I work with people who want to improve their confidence speaking English as a second plus language. As well as teaching private one-to-one lessons online, I also create content here on YouTube, but also on other social media platforms like Instagram. So if you're interested, check out my profile and you'll find all the links. Even better, if you think you'll find my lessons useful, make sure you subscribe. I publish twice a week on Sundays and Wednesdays. Should we get started? Okay, so the first phrase that I've got for you today is not to worry. And I use this phrase so much that it was one of the first expressions that my daughter learnt when she was a baby. Obviously, first of all, she started saying words like mama and dad, but then it wasn't long before she was saying not to worry. Not to worry is a phrase that we use to reassure somebody. It's a good way of telling somebody that everything's okay and there's nothing to be concerned about. A little bit like no worries or never mind. For example, if somebody had to let you down for some reason, you could say, not to worry. It's a really good way to ease somebody's mind and to let them know that it's not a big deal. I often say, not to worry, it's not the end of the world. Nobody died. The next phrase we're going to look at is by the way. And we use by the way to introduce a new topic or to add extra information in a conversation. For example, I might be talking to somebody saying, I can't find my glasses anywhere. Have you seen them? Oh, by the way, while I remember, could you pick up some milk when you go out, please? Picking up the milk is completely unrelated to me not being able to find my glasses, but it's something that I want to mention while I remember, before it slips my mind again. Now with by the way, it's only really appropriate to use in light conversation that's darting around maybe from one topic to the other. If you were in an intense, heavy, deep conversation with somebody, maybe sharing personal or private information, and then they suddenly said, by the way, have you seen that new TV show on Netflix? It would come across as really rude because it would imply that you weren't listening or paying attention to that person. The next English phrase that we're going to look at that I use multiple times a day is won't be a minute. And when you say won't be a minute, it means I won't be long. I often use won't be a minute with my next phrase, which is hang on. When you say hang on, you're asking somebody to wait. Hang on, won't be long, won't be a minute. Hang on, I'm coming. The next expression that you could say I overuse is the expression that makes sense. When you say that makes sense, you're telling the other person that what they're saying is understandable. You might not agree with them entirely. You can understand where they're coming from. You can understand their reasoning. Somebody might be talking about finding a new job or following a new career path and explaining to you their reasoning behind it, and you could reply, yeah, that makes sense. You wouldn't necessarily do it yourself, but for that person it makes perfect sense. Similar to that makes sense is fair enough. I think that's too expensive, and the other person might say, well, fair enough, they understand. The next phrase that we're going to look at is I could do with. When you say you could do with something, it means that you need or want something. I could do with a cup of tea. I could do with sitting down for half an hour with a good book. I could do with 2 weeks in Barbados. It's like a softer way of saying I need. I could say I need 2 weeks in Barbados, but that sounds a little bit entitled. By saying I could do with 2 weeks in Barbados, it suggests that I would benefit from 2 weeks in Barbados. I think everybody could do with 2 weeks in Barbados. The next phrase that I use all the time is do you fancy? Do you fancy? Do you fancy? It's a way of saying would you like to? Do you fancy going for a walk? Do you fancy going to Barbados for 2 weeks? I'm obsessed with going to Barbados for 2 weeks. Do you fancy a cup of tea? It's a friendly, casual invitation. Do you fancy coming over for dinner tonight? The last English phrase that we're going to look at today is take care. Now, I use this all the time at the end of a conversation. When I'm saying goodbye to somebody, I'll usually say to them, take care, which means look after yourself. And it's a warm way to end a conversation or a meeting. With my students, the end of a lesson, I'll usually say, oh, that was great. It was good to see you. See you next time. Take care. It's a way of finishing a conversation. As usual, if you go over to my website, you'll be able to find a blog with a free PDF where I'll go through all these expressions with definitions and examples of usage. So make sure you download that if you think you'll find it useful. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to join me for the next lesson, then make sure you like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Take care.